What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Between Two Tackles. I'm your host, Alex Spinelli, and alongside me, as always, is Ray Voulo. Ray, my man, how are we feeling? Conference championships are done. Unfortunately, Penn State did not get the win, but they did get arguably the best path in the college football playoff. The rankings are
not arguable.
Right, true. The best path. Let's fucking go. What a consolation prize for losing the Big Ten championship.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's better. I think it's better outcome, way better outcome for you guys than winning. I think you guys have the easiest path by far. You should be into the semis.
Right.
If you're not, it's a major disappointment.
Oh, I mean, I don't want to speak too soon. I'm not even, we're not even going to say anything right now.
Fair.
This is not the episode. We will get to those games next week. We got Army Navy this week. Nice way to wrap up, the regular season. Who you got this week?
Going Army, baby.
Yeah, me too. I think I'm taking 6.5. I think I might take some alt lines too. I might take like 13.5.
What's the over under?
That I don't know.
Like 28?
I think it's higher than that.
I'm taking the under then.
Yeah, I like that. I think Tom Fornelli always calls this out when the service academies play. It's like the under is like 42, 11, and 1 or something ridiculous.
Always.
Yeah.
I remember one time, like, I want to say it was like 2017, 2018, or maybe 2017. It was like a blizzard. And it was just, I think it was like, there was like 3 missed field goals. The final was like 6-3 or something ridiculous like that. And I lost. I was so pissed.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love it. We're looking for a big game from Bryson Daly for sure. But like we said, that is not the episode either. Today we got another mock draft for the people. Feel like this was kind of a nice way to wrap up the season. We'll get our end of season thoughts out there before we start getting to the playoffs, start getting to the Senior Bowl, and we start actually diving deeper into these guys. But Ray, let's kick it off. I got the odds, you got the evens to start. So I'm starting out here. We got the Las Vegas Raiders with the current number 1 spot, number 1 pick. And who else but Shedeur Sanders in the number 1 spot, Ray? I mean, Prime said it. You got to draft my son. You got to draft the Sanders boys. So shout out Shedeur and shout out Shiloh. Going to be hitting the Vegas streets. But I really do feel like this is a really good fit for Vegas and for Shedeur. He's been really good this year, man. I think I was a little bit down on him coming into the year. I had him outside my top 5 for our summer scouting rankings, and he's really impressed this year. Just his overall growth and maturity in the offense, and just his ball placement continues to be great. He's completing 75% of his passes this year. The only thing that concerns me a little bit about this fit in particular with he and the Raiders is this offensive line. He's a drifter. He's not overly athletic either. He can escape, but he's not a creator with his legs. They've allowed the 4th most sacks in the league this year, but I do really like this young core of pass catchers that they have for him, especially a guy who kind of likes to attack the middle of the field with Bowers, with Mayer at tight end, who finally had a really nice game last week, kind of his coming out party. And even a guy like Trey Tucker, who's kind of a downfield threat for them. So I really like Shedeur. I think for me right now, he's my QB1 heading into, this draft season, we'll call it. But I really do like this fit, and it seems like Vegas has been clamoring for a quarterback like this.
Yeah, I mean, the fit makes too much sense. I mean, Vegas has been going, Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, and now Ritter may get the start this week.
It's bad.
Yeah, it's bad there. I'm curious if Antonio Pierce is going to be a 1.5 done, 1 and done, and if so, who they're going to bring in.
You think Prime's got a shot?
I think people are speculating it. I'd be surprised.
Me too.
Especially just based on the way Colorado's been recruiting. I feel like they've been recruiting pretty actively, especially in the transfer portal. So I'd be a little surprised by that. But who knows, man? If they offer him enough money, he gets to coach his son in the NFL. I would not be surprised.
That'd be insane. That would really be awesome, though. You're on the clock here at pick 2 with the New York Football Giants. Who you got?
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna. It's crazy that we're mocking this, but I'm gonna mock Cam Ward going number 2. So QB 1 and 2 here. The Giants are kind of desperate, man. The Daniel Jones era is at an end, obviously. This franchise needs some life. They need someone to be the face and really lead this team. Seems they're destined to go QB, and Cam Ward seems like the obvious choice, just given the narrative around this quarterback class. I don't know if it's going to change by the time the draft comes along, but I think clearly the 1-2 right now across like the league is just Shador and Cam Ward. We'll see what happens if Aller has a big playoff or something along those lines. But I mean, I'll start with the positives. Cam Ward's coming off a monster year. I mean, he's a Heisman finalist. He threw for 4,100 yards, 36 touchdowns, 7 picks. People always rave about his leadership in the locker room, and I think his like cool, calm demeanor, as opposed to Shadur's kind of like flair and that Sanders confidence, we'll call it. I think this is going to play a little bit better in New York.
It's just
And
money, Ray.
yeah, I mean, I think for New York purposes, Cam Ward's a little bit safer in that regards. He's got a really good arm, some athleticism. He's really good off platform with those different arm angles. I think some of the negatives with him, I think he's got really sloppy footwork and borderline lazy. I think he kind of holds on to the ball a little bit too long with those hero ball moments, similar to what Shador does as well. And the decision making's got to be a little bit better. He's 7 interceptions, 4 fumbles, and 15 turnover worthy plays this year. So I think in the NFL, I think he'd be best off if he sat a little bit and kind of learned and developed, and kind of got like slowly acclimated to the NFL before they threw him right into the fire. But this is a guy, he's got arm talent, and I think he's got a little bit of an it factor that people are really buying into. So if Dable and Shane are still there, I think they need to take a quarterback to kind of extend their job life a little bit. And he's the clear cut number 2 as of now. So I think if for some reason there's a new regime in here, I think maybe they're a little bit more likely to go best player available and go with a cornerback, wide receiver, offensive lineman, just because there's so many holes still on this roster. But as of now, assuming it's going to be the same regime, Cam Ward's got to be the pick.
Yeah, he's been awesome this year, man. It's really hard to knock the season that he's had. And I know you said maybe have him sit for a year. I'm not sure about him sitting for a year because, I mean, this is a guy that's played a lot of football. This is a guy that teams probably think, he's ready to go because he's played so much football. And it seems like that's kind of been the trend the last few years. Like, the NFL really doesn't want to sit these guys. Like, they're really not looking for these guys who have only played, 12, 13 games, a la the Anthony Richardsons of the world. They really want these guys to come in and like be ready, which isn't always smart, one, and two, it's not always like realistic for a lot of these guys. So I'm very curious to see what happens with Cam Ward. I can't believe coming into the season that we're talking about this guy as a top 5 pick, and I can't believe that I may have to pay favs for him being a top 5 pick. That would be crazy, but it's hard to knock the season that he's had. And based on this weak quarterback class, man, I think he has cemented himself as at least a top 10 pick. So I know there's a lot of time still left in this draft cycle, but I really have a hard time seeing anybody overtake Shador and Cam Ward as the top 2 guys based on the way they've played this year.
I don't know. I could see Aller maybe make some noise, or even
I think
depending on flavor.
I think Aller needs to have just a monster playoff for him to do so.
Well, I think in my mind too, I'm also talking. I don't know. I can also see a world where the quarterbacks aren't going at the top of the draft. I can see a world like it's 2022, and like there was a lot of speculation early on that people would reach, and then as the process goes along, the temperature kind of cools down a little bit, especially with what happens in the veteran quarterback market. But as of now, it's we gotta assume it's gonna be QBs at the top or near the top.
Yeah, that's fair. I think the one thing I'll push back about the 2022 draft is, one, Shador and Cam Ward are miles ahead of Pickett and Willis, who are in that draft.
Shador kind of reminds me of Pickett a little bit.
Does he?
Not the best arm, good decision making, accurate when he gets the ball
he's got
out
a way
on
better
time.
arm, and I think he's a better processor than Pickett was too. I mean, I think we were right like immediately in that draft. We had called that out. We were like, none of these guys are worth first round picks, and we were right on that one. I don't know. I still think this. I was looking back at that draft too because we had previously talked about it, and like it felt like those teams weren't as quarterback needy as some of these teams at the top of the draft. Like there are some really bad football teams at the top of this draft. So again,
the way I put it though, like you said it perfectly, bad teams. Full rosters of the Giants and the Raiders. They need playmakers and impact talent all over the place.
You're right.
I don't know. It's tough.
You're right. But we do go quarterback. to start 1-2. I'm on the clock here at pick 3 with the New England Patriots. I got them taking wide receiver from Arizona, Tedero and McMillan. Man, this pick, I was a little bit conflicted between wide receiver and offensive lineman. It feels like we're at that point in every mock draft that we do. At this point, this offensive line is just an absolute disaster. 5th most sacks in the league allowed. But I think McMillan is kind of just a tier ahead of all these tackles. So that's why I went with the pass catcher. They really just need an alpha wide receiver to help Drake May. And I do think that this young core with McMillan in it, between him, Pop Douglas, Jalen Polk, Javon Baker, even they got Kayshon Boutte going a little bit this year. I think that's a nice young core for Drake. Dude, can't believe we're talking about Kayshon Boutte in the NFL.
It's funny because I'm sorry to sidetrack for Kayshon Boutte for a second. With that Jet game, he looked like the worst player I've ever seen in my life. And then the fact that he ended up beating us against Sauce Gardner is just fucking preposterous. But go on. Yeah. I'm sorry.
No. The Patriots are last in passing yards this season, and they're second to last in passing touchdowns. Like I said, they just need a dominant alpha, and I think McMillan puts them over the top in that category. So I got them going Tedero and McMillan here at 3 to the New England Patriots.
Okay, I'm on the clock with Carolina at 4. I'm going Travis Hunter here, and this was a tough one just because, as we mentioned before, like the top of this draft is loaded with bad teams, and this is another team that has holes all over the place, especially on defense. They have holes on all 3 levels.
Yes.
Edge rushers in particular too, so it was kind of a little bit back and forth for me there. But this is a pass defense. They've allowed a passer rating of 103 or 102.9 to be exact. It's 3rd worst in the league and 7.4 yards per attempt, which is like bottom 10. So I think Travis Hunter, pairing him with J.C. Horn would be a really dynamic 1-2 punch. And just he's also someone I think they're going to contribute on offense, whether it's 25 to 33% of snaps, he's going to have a role. And I think he would complement what Xavier Legette does well, too. I think, he's obviously had a monster year on both ends, but Travis Hunter is really raw at corner, but the physical ability in his length, his physicality, his athleticism, and most importantly, his ball skills, I think he can develop into a real true number 1 cornerback and a number 2 or 3 wide receiver to boot too, just depending on how many snaps they give him. This year, I think he was a 58% completion against, 1 touchdown, 4 picks, 7 pass breakups, just showing those ball skills. And then offensively, 92 receptions, 1,152 yards, and 14 touchdowns. So we talk about it every time. It's going to be super interesting to see how the team that drafts him handles him. I'm still leaning cornerback mainly, just because I think if you're a full-time cornerback, you can still integrate to offense a little bit as opposed to the other way around. But the year he had a wide receiver really makes me pause for a second. So I'm curious to see how this works out.
Yeah, I actually think he's better at wide receiver, but in comparison to the rest of the league, or I'll say in college right now, he's probably a better corner in terms of like percentile, I guess I'll call it. But yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be fascinating to see how a team handles him. I'd also be fascinated to see if Deion Sanders steps in here too and says, hell no, I do not want Travis Hunter going to fucking Carolina, even though it does seem like they've turned the corner a little bit in these last few weeks. Bryce Young's been playing some good football, so we're hoping for him. We really like Bryce. So I'd be curious to see if this was a possible landing spot for him.
So that was a good point. I wanted to bring that up because they all say that Deion's going to have influence in both where he and Shedeur go.
I think so.
I mean, the way I view it, landing spot for quarterbacks way more important, even though 100%. It's important for both. So I could see him being able to strong arm with the quarterback a little bit more. But like with Shedeur, being a corner, like I guess maybe just the plan because he's a 2-way guy that could be big. Like maybe they can like one out, but I just don't know how much leverage you're going to have.
Yeah, and honestly, taking a look at the top of this draft where Travis Hunter's going to go, where do you feel comfortable? Like, if you're Deion Sanders, like, where do you feel comfortable sending him to go and play if you're not comfortable with Carolina? Like, the Giants, the Patriots, even though the Patriots are, like, they're well-respected organizations, but they're not good organizations right now. Jacksonville, Tennessee, like, these are disasters, and you're losing a lot of money if you let this guy slide to go to a place that he really wants to go to. Not that money's really an issue because he's making a ton of money right now in college and he'll keep making money with endorsements and stuff like that. But for that rookie contract, the scale slides pretty quickly if you start falling out of the top 5. So I'm fascinated with this, but Travis Hunter, amazing player. You said it. I mean, arguably some of the best ball skills I've ever seen in a player in college. And for them in Carolina, as long as JC Horn is healthy and Travis Hunter is your number 2 corner, that's a damn good place to start in the secondary. So I really like this fit for Carolina, who needs playmakers on both sides of the ball, especially on that defense, like you said. I'm on the clock here at 5 with the Jacksonville Jaguars. This was the easiest pick for me, I think, in this draft. I got them taking interior defensive lineman Mason Graham from Michigan. This is another team that I think needs offensive line help to protect Trevor Lawrence. But I think this D-line in particular needs help on the interior. Graham is my number 2 player on my board right now. He's top 10 in the country among interior defensive linemen in pressure, sacks, and pass rush win rate. And he's top 5 in run stops and run stop win rate. He's just a blue chip prospect in a draft that doesn't have a lot. So hard for me to pass up here at pick 5 with the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, I like that for them. I feel like it'd be questionable for them to go with that OT1 here, but there's no doubt this defense needs an overhaul, especially in the interior of that defensive line.
Yeah, agreed. You're on the clock here at 6 with the Tennessee Titans.
So here for the Titans, I am going to go with Nick Scorton, the edge from Texas A&M. This Titans defense only has 27 sacks on the year. I think that's bottom 10 in the league, if not mistaken. But they do have a strong foundation up front with Simmons, Sweat, and Landry. And I just think Nick Scorton would be the perfect complement to them all. He's a unique edge rusher. He's 6'4", 285. He's listed at. I wouldn't be surprised if he kind of comes in closer to 270 when all said and done at the combine. But I think he's scheme proof and he's versatile in where how he can align. I think he could be a stand-up edge rusher. He can be a hand in the dirt in a 4-3. I think he can line over the tackle as like a 5 tech, and I think he can even kick inside if need be. I don't think it's a perfect. No, and also not to mention he's an outstanding run defender. Really deep pass rush arsenal as well. So I think he has a really high floor and high ceiling. I think this guy's going to end up being one of my top 5 players in this draft class. I really do love the way he plays. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Khalil Mack in a sense. I don't know how to like actually word it. Like I just think Khalil Mack was a really unique, just juiced up big, and he could like he can drop into coverage. He could play so many different fronts. I feel like whoever's drafting him, and he's also kind of like a ball of clay still too, where he's a little bit raw with upside. He's only gonna be 20 years old on draft day, so I think this is one of my favorite players in the draft. I think this Titans front, have fun running on them if they add Nick Scorton to the mix too, because this Titans team would be really, really, really impressive and tough.
Yeah, I agree. I love Nick Scorton too. He's a top 5 guy for me on my big board right now. So I really like this player. I don't love this pick right now for Tennessee. I think they really need to go offensive line. This offensive line, especially the right side of this offensive line, is a disaster.
Well, I thought about that, but it'd be 3 consecutive years using your first pick on the offensive line. You have Callahan.
If you're not good though,
and
if you're not good, you're not good though.
Yeah, but just all youth up front. Maybe get some veteran presence in free agency. Spend a little cash on the front and try to improve it that way. And I think also in terms of guard play, you can get some good guards on day 2 too.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the right tackle has been the biggest issue with Nicholas Petit-Frere. I mean, it's not like they haven't paid guys either. They paid Lloyd Cushenberry last offseason. They gave him a pretty healthy contract. I understand, you got Latham and Skoronski. Skoronski hasn't been, as advertised in the first 2 years, but I still think he's a good player. But man, I think they really need to add one of these blue chip tackles because it does seem like the draft community has been starting to open up more guys in the past few weeks. Like more guys are starting to get some name recognition. So maybe the class is a little bit deeper than we initially anticipated, and they can get a guy on day 2. But man,
I think where it came from to me too. I just don't see the ceiling in the tackle class this year. I think there's going to be some there could be some good starters you can get, but like I don't think any of these tackles are like generational top 5 picks, like hands down. You know what I mean? I don't think they're going to be viewed as potential all pros. I think they all have their flaws. None of them are really perfect prospects. I think Olu would have been the off the tackle 1 in this class, not hands down. Like if you could get an Olu Fashanu here, maybe, but this isn't last year's class. I think it's just overall weaker, and I think Scorton's going to turn out to be one of my top 3 players if I had to guess.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I really like the player, and this Titans defense has been scrappy, so I'm really looking offense. And I mean, who knows what happens with Will Levis and the quarterback situation next year. So that's a whole nother topic of debate for sure.
Yeah.
I'm on the clock here at 7 with our New York Jets. Man, I hate picking for the Jets. I usually try to leave that to you. And in this situation, I would love to trade back and accumulate more assets, but we are not trading in this mock because I'll do anything to not have Aaron Rodgers on this team. I'm taking a quarterback, man. I'm taking Drew Aller, Penn State quarterback. This may seem a little bit high, even though I know you're a big Aller fan now since that Big Ten championship, Ray.
Yeah, totally.
But this is a shallow quarterback class, as we kind of mentioned. I could really see Aller being the third guy off the board with NFL-ready tools. He still has some issues, still a little bit late in his processing. He still has ball placement issues at times, but man, he's been just a different player this year in 2024 compared to 2023. He looks so much more confident. He's got better mobility in the pocket, extending plays. And just the arm talent is really undeniable. When he unleashes a ball, and there are times in the game when he throws with touch, you're like, man, like he just has so much raw talent that he could really be a top 15 type of guy in a weak quarterback class. In this situation for the Jets, I would love for him to sit a year. I think he needs time to sit and learn. They have Tyrod Taylor under contract next year too. But I really like Aller's mentality. And I like his traits and his leadership moving forward for a Jets roster who's still really young, and they do have a lot of weapons.
Yeah, I mean, I would hate this. I think this would be stupid. It'd be panicked. But the thing is, if this is the case, this is just straight from Woody saying, just go get a quarterback. And that's not out of the realm of possibility. So this would be one of those ones where I finish a bottle and cry myself to sleep, and then I wake up the next day and say, "Oh, I was always behind it." So
yeah, we would talk ourselves into this fast.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk myself into anything when it comes to the Jets. It's a mental disorder. So yeah, but no, I mean, change it up a little bit, but not what I would have done if I were picking for us. But that's why we switch it up a little bit.
Yeah, got to do what you got to do. All right, you're on the clock here at 8 with the Cleveland Browns.
So I'm going with Kelvin Banks, the offensive tackle from Texas. Jedrick Wills is a free agent. He's kind of been hot and cold in his run. DeJuan Jones is too big, can't stay on the field. And when he's been on the field this past year, he hasn't been impressive. And Conklin's also getting up there in age. This is an offensive line that's allowed the second most sacks in the league with 53 as it is. And there's going to be some turnover, you have to imagine. So Kelvin Banks, he's been the left tackle for, I think, at least 2 years. Did he start as a freshman? Yes, he did. He was a starter at freshman at left tackle for Texas. Some say he may be a better guard. He's got that guard-ish build. He's 6'4", about 320-ish, 325. But regardless, I think you can play him at tackle as a rookie. And then if you need to kick him inside, you can. But I think he's a damn good player. He's a good athlete, too, a really good mover, fluid in the run game. He's got a lot of range. I think, assuming they retain Stefanski, I think he fits the scheme really well and could be a blindside protector for whoever's under center.
Yeah, Kelvin Banks is a really good player, man. I don't know. Very, very safe.
AVT like in my mind.
Who'd you say?
AVT.
Yeah, very much. And I think he's got more upside at tackle than AVT. But I agree. I think like this is a guy, I think if you do kick him inside, like this is a Pro Bowl type of guard player. We'll see if he sticks at tackle, but I do like this for Cleveland. I mean, this offensive line has been a revolving door this whole season with injuries and guys getting up there in age. So I do like this. I think they need to continue to add pieces on this offensive line because this was a big strength for this team the last few years, and it's kind of come crumbling down this past season. All right, I'm on the clock here at pick 9 with the Chicago Bears. I got them taking offensive tackle Will Campbell from LSU. This was a tough spot for me. I really wanted Banks here because I do like his versatility a little bit more to kick inside if needed. But I just think the Bears need to continue to add pieces on this offensive line. They lead the league in sacks allowed with 56. It's largely stemming from the interior. And while I think, like I said, Banks is probably a better fit for this team with him gone, I still think Campbell is an upgrade for this offensive line. They're losing a bunch of depth that really hasn't played well this past season in free agency. Tevin Jenkins is the notable one for them as their right guard hitting free agency. With shorter arm length, though, I do think there is a possibility that he could push inside, even though he's a little bit taller. He's around 6'5". But he's 325, so I do think he has enough mass to play inside because they do like Braxton Jones playing left tackle for them, and Braxton Jones is just a mammoth of a human being. I don't know if he's a guy that you can really push inside. I think he's just too big to play guard. But let them battle it out at camp, and then maybe Braxton Jones is your swing tackle, and Darnell Wright is your right tackle, and Will Campbell takes over that left side. But Campbell's played over 2,000 snaps at left tackle. He's never played in the interior, so I think it'd be really tough. But Braxton Jones has done a really good job as a day 3 pick, but I really think you just get your best 5 out there and do whatever you can to protect Caleb Williams because you do have a lot of pieces and a lot of weapons on this offense to work with. You just need to get that offensive line under wraps, and then this team can really start to take off.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I do agree with you. It's funny that I think Banks may be a better fit if he was on the board too, but people do speculate Will Campbell could kick inside, and particularly even into center. I saw some people speculating.
That'd be really interesting.
Which would be wild to say, but he's a good talent. People really rave about him. I've seen a lot of people claim that he's clear cut number 1 offensive tackle. I'm not sure if I agree, but I think it makes a lot of sense for Chicago to secure up that offensive line.
I mean, he's just really steady. I feel like he and Banks are both like pretty safe guy. I mean, Campbell's only allowed 3 sacks in 3 years of starting at LSU, where you play a lot of tough competition. Like he's just really steady Eddie. Playing center would be really interesting for a guy who's played a ton of football at only left tackle.
Yeah.
Interesting. Very. All right. You're on the clock. Round out our top 10 here with the Cincinnati Bengals. Did not expect the Bengals to be in this top 10.
Yeah, right. It's been a down year, and it's mainly because of this defense. So I got to get some talent there. I'm going Will Johnson, cornerback from Michigan. I think this Bengals defense needs talent on all 3 levels as well, similar to what I mentioned about the Panthers earlier. But they've invested pretty heavily in the defensive front recently. I think the second round they took Chris Jenkins last year. In the third round they took McKinley Jackson, who were 2 players I really did like. And then in the first round the year prior they took Miles Murphy, the edge. So I'm gonna go into the back end. Sure up, get an elite talent like Will Johnson, 6'2", 200 pounds, really good length and great ball skills. He had 2 picks in 6 games this year. I think at least one of those was a pick 6, and 4 interceptions last year. I think they need a true playmaker on the back end that they lost in Jesse Bates, and I think he kind of fills that role immediately. I think he'll be a day 1, number 1 corner for them. Some people do question the long speed, but I think he's got good enough speed where he can hold up.
Yeah, I just think his technique and his lateral movements are so fluid and so crisp. I'm not really worried about his long speed. Man, I love Will Johnson. He's such a damn good player. He's another one. It's really tough to say a corner is a safe pick, but I really do feel that way about Will Johnson. Playing corner is one of the toughest positions in the NFL, but I really do feel like once he comes into the league, he's going to be a steady Eddie guy for a long time. All right, let's run through this top 10, and then we'll keep it rolling. At pick 1, the Las Vegas Raiders took quarterback Shedeur Sanders from Colorado. Pick 2 was the New York Giants taking Cam Ward, quarterback from Miami. 3 was the New England Patriots taking wide receiver Tedero McMillan, wide receiver from Arizona. 4 was the Carolina Panthers taking Travis Hunter, the wide receiver corner from Colorado. Pick 5 was the Jacksonville Jaguars taking interior defensive lineman from Michigan, Mason Graham. 6, the Tennessee Titans took Nick Scorton, the edge from Texas A&M. Pick 7 was the New York Jets taking quarterback Drew Aller from Penn State. 8 was the Cleveland Browns taking offensive tackle Kelvin Banks from Texas. 9 was the Chicago Bears taking Will Campbell, the offensive tackle from LSU. And then 10, the Cincinnati Bengals took corner from Michigan, Will Johnson. I'm on the clock here at pick 11 with the New Orleans Saints. I got them taking Abdul Carter, the edge from Penn State. I mean, this defense and this defensive line in particular, they just need juice, man. They really just need playmakers everywhere. They rank bottom 5 in pass rush win rate. Cam Jordan, longtime Saint, he's going to be 36 next year. Chase Young is a free agent. Peyton Turner's got a club option that he will likely not get picked up because I think it's around $11 million. Their third leader in sacks this year is a corner. So they desperately need help.
That's insane.
Yeah, ridiculous. They desperately need help along this defensive line. Carter improves this room immediately. He's top 10 in pressures. He's top 5 in sacks with 10, and he's also top 5 in pass rush win rate at 21.2. just his first year as a full-time edge. He's already been dominant, and I think he's even got more room to grow once he starts developing some more pass rush plan, starting to use his hands a little bit more, not just using his athleticism to win. Um, I think this guy's going to be dominant in the NFL. I love his talent. I love his tenacity. I love his mindset. He's my number one player on my board right now. This is Abdul Carter. So I got Abdul Carter going 11 to the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, I love this pick. I think this is probably a little low for where Carter's going to end up. I think he's going to be in the top 10, especially in this draft class. But in terms of the Saints, I think this is going to be the start of an absolute rebuild for them. I think they're going to start tearing it down stone by stone. I think they're going to have to eat all their medicine or take all their medicine as soon as possible when it comes to all that cap manipulation.
The Rizzler tearing it down.
And just kind of reset, man. I think they straight up just need a reset. So I think it's good going best player available in this situation.
I know you hated that.
I ignored it. I'm not sure if you heard. I just went right through.
Oh man! All right, you're on the clock. You're on the clock here at 12 with the Dallas Cowboys.
It's my favorite pick so far. Luther Burden, wide receiver from Missouri.
Nice.
I love this fit so much. I think
we got away from Ashton Genty to the Cowboys.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are gonna be begging for that, but I think this makes too much sense just in terms of needs. In about 3-4 months when we do our favorite player to teams matchup, this is going to be my number one, guarantee it. But he hasn't had the best year this year. 61 catches, 676 yards, and 6 touchdowns. But the year prior, he put up 86 catches for 1,200 yards and 9 touchdowns. So I think that his game really translates to a perfect number 2 receiver where he will complement CeeDee Lamb, who's a top 3 receiver in this league. They need another weapon so desperately. Cooks is going to be a free agent. They traded that 4th round pick for my boy Mingo, but wildly unproven. I don't think you can rely on that being number 2. Luther Burden, 5'11", but 210 pounds. He's kind of built like a brick shit house. He's got that sturdy build that really helps him hold up in those I'm trying to think of those gadget role, which I think he'll be able to fill immediately early because he's kind of a chess piece. He played 85% of his snaps out of the slot. He's dynamic with the ball in his hands. I think more than half his yards came after the catch. So I think that's kind of going to be his role early. He'll be that move piece on those gadget plays, but he'll develop into a really nice number 2 receiver for Dak.
Yeah, I really like this fit too, and I like the way that he and CD will complement each other. They're big at moving their dominant receiver into the slot. CD plays a ton out of the slot, so I'd be curious to see how they work off of each other, how much time they split in the slot, and how much time they go out wide. But I agree, they desperately need pass catchers, and I do like the way Rico Dowdle's running the football right now. So I feel like even though Ashton Genty is a big time player, I think wide receiver is definitely more of the position of need, like you said. So I like this pick for Luther Burden and the Dallas Cowboys.
This running back class is also ridiculously deep too.
Yes,
they can come away with like a Quishad Judkins, Trevion Henderson, or like Caleb Johnson on day 2 on the 2nd round pick too. So and that's just
you might come away with like a Giddens or RJ Harvey on day 3, and you might get good stuff out of them.
Yeah, I just think the supply of running backs is just I think it's going to push Genty down. I don't see how it doesn't personally.
Yeah, I still think he's a first rounder because I just think he's too talented. But I agree. I think top half of the draft, it seems a little rich.
Well, now I'm thinking. I'm just talking myself into it. This draft class is weak as hell as it is. So maybe just go with like someone who's going to be a surefire type of guy if you view Genty like that, regardless of position. But I don't know. Fun debate. We'll see how it ends up down the road.
When we get closer to the drafts and we're looking at props, I'm going to be fascinated to see where his like over under is.
Yeah,
it's going to be awesome. I can't wait to do props for this draft. All right, I'm on the clock here at pick 13 with the Miami Dolphins. I got them taking offensive lineman Ariante Ursary from Minnesota. This is another team that I think needs a defensive lineman with Bradley Chubb, starting to come back from his ACL injury, and Jalen Phillips, who's dealing with more injuries now. But I think this need at offensive line is just too pressing. At the Miami Dolphins core, they want to be really good offensively and use their speed. And in particular, they really want this run game to set up everything else they do with all the motion that they do pre-snap. But this offensive line just hasn't been good enough this year. And honestly, last year really wasn't that great either. They're bottom 10 in rush yards and bottom 5 in rush yards per carry at just 3.9. This might be a little bit high for Ursary, but I think this is the type of player that they really need. They just need an ass kicker. They need a mauler at one of their tackle positions. They have too many guys who are just a little bit too finessey. So I'm looking for them to get a real ass kicker on that offensive line. He really impressed me when Penn State played Minnesota. Like he bodied up and bitched Abdul Carter a few reps. Like I was really really impressed with the way he moved. A couple I've been seeing that he also could possibly kick inside to play guard. He's a massive, massive human being. He's like 335. But I think for them, he would end up playing left tackle for them.
Well, Becton's playing guard, and Nikki just told me before Patrick Paul's been playing guard for the Dolphins already too, which is outrageous to me. But I've been saying for at least a year that this Dolphins offensive line needs to get tougher. I think I mocked Graham Barton to them a couple of times last year. And I think in the preseason or at the beginning of the season, our first mock, I had Emory Jones going to them too. It was just an ass kicker. They need some edge on that offensive line, I think, and on the defensive line, if we're being honest. So I do like the pick in that regard.
Yeah. All right, you're on the clock here at 14 with the Indianapolis Colts.
This is my toughest one so far because I really wanted to go either a defensive lineman, a defensive tackle, or Malachi Starks, who I think he's falling way too far in this draft.
Yes, he has.
But I just didn't like the fit there, and I'm pretty sure I mocked Starks to the Colts last time anyway. So I want to change it up. I'm going Tyler Warren.
Hell yeah,
your
brother.
boy from Penn State, 6'6", 260 tight end, coming off a monster year, 88 catches, 1,062 yards and 6 touchdowns. Generated some Heisman buzz. I really thought he should have gotten an invite.
I think it was just me generating Heisman buzz.
I think he should have gotten an invite, man. In the year that, I feel like this year of college football, I think he kind of deserved it, especially on a top 5 team with how he was the most important player on that team. I don't think you can even argue it. But he's big enough to be an inline blocker for this that the Colts covet just because they want to run the ball so heavy. He only was lined up inside 35% of the time as opposed to out wide 12% and in the slot about 47%. But I think he can be a more than adequate blocker and be fine in line. He even got reps at Wildcat quarterback. So that just shows his athleticism and his ability to make plays. I think he'll be a great field stretcher for Anthony Richardson for at least 2025 if they decide to move on after that. But I think he also complements this group of really young playmakers well too. Pittman being the underneath possession type guy, Downs being the slot, A.D. Mitchell being the raw out wide guy, Pierce being the field stretcher. I think he fits right in and really complements this group well. So I'm going Warren to have some fun.
Yeah, I love me some Tyler Warren, man. I think he fits every scheme. I think he fits every team. I think he's going to be an awesome, awesome football player once he gets in the league. Ray, I'm noticing a little bit of a trend. What team has the most players drafted so far to the first 15 picks?
I would assume
is it Penn State?
And tie with the team up north. Oh no, they're not. Drew Aller. Yeah, because you had the
best team in the country, man.
That's crazy. Good for you.
All right, I'm on the clock here at pick 15 with the Atlanta Falcons. Ray, tell me if you've heard this before. The Atlanta Falcons need an edge rusher.
Shocking.
Literally, I'm taking James Pierce Jr., the edge rusher from Tennessee. Atlanta is last in the league in sacks with just 19 this season. That's just absolutely pathetic and not good enough to get it done. Pierce was my number one edge coming out over the summer with his elite movement and bursts. He started off this year a little bit slow, but he has really turned it on in his back half of the season. He's got 6 sacks in the last 6 games. He's second in the country right now in pass rush win rate at 23%. He will be a great complement to the guys that they have on the interior. They just need some juice, man, on that edge. And I think James Pierce is going to be a really good player. I think he still needs to put on a little bit of weight. I still think he's a little bit light. But, man, he's just got raw tools. And just the way he moves around the football field, he looks like a wide receiver when he runs. So, really good player, and I think this is exactly who Atlanta is looking for.
Yeah, I mean, I love James Pierce as a prospect. I think he has maybe the most ceiling in this entire draft class, just by the way he moves as a raw pass rusher. Sort of in that Will McDonald range, but I think he's a better prospect than Will was coming out. He's got a little bit more buzz generated, but I do love this fit for Atlanta. They need a juicy edge rusher like that. Pause.
Yeah. He's juicy, all right. Yeah. All right, you're on the clock here at 16 with the Arizona Cardinals.
I'm going someone new. I don't think we've had him in first round of our mock. I'm going Derek Harmon, the defensive tackle
Ooh,
from Oregon.
nice.
I did mention him, I think, as one of our stock up episodes earlier in the season because he had a monster year and he really finished out strong. I think he's the fourth year junior, if I'm not mistaken, from Michigan State.
Hmm.
6'5", 310. This year he had 50 total pressures, 5 sacks, 9 tackles for a loss. He's massive. But he's also quick too, so he can generate some disruption in the backfield, which I think is really coveted on this team in particular. But in Jonathan Gannon's scheme, they drafted Darius Robinson, my boy, at the back end of round one last year. But he's more of a heavy-handed edge who can kick inside on passing downs. This is a true defensive tackle. He can eat up blocks and generate that pressure from up the middle. I think it really helped this defense as a whole.
Yeah, Derek Harmon's a really good player, man, and I'm glad that he's getting some love in this mock because we haven't had him in the past. But man, he's just been a consistent riser this year. He's been the heartbeat of that defense, honestly, this year on that defensive line, especially with Jordan Birch missing a little bit of time. He really solidified that defensive line for Oregon. He looked great against Penn State too during that Big Ten championship. So nice call out here.
Shout out Jordan Birch too. I really like him as a prospect. I
Very
think
good player.
He'll end up rising. He's a freak show.
Yeah. All right, I'm on the clock here at 17 with the San Francisco 49ers. This was a tough pick. I think this might have been my toughest selection. I got them taking Mykel Williams here, the edge from Georgia. I really thought I was going to go offensive line here, but just with the way that the board was falling and the talent that is Mykel Williams, I thought it was just too much to pass up. This team's really interesting because they have a ton of good players. They have a ton of massive contracts to a lot of these guys. And they also are most likely going to be coming up on a Brock Purdy extension this offseason too. So really tough to navigate their contract situation and who they can bring in free agency. Like I said, I really thought about offensive line. Aaron Banks and Colt McKivitz are both going to be free agents this year. Trent Williams is 36. I mean, he's still playing really good football, but he's obviously getting up there. But I feel like the scheme that they run, unless they want to get rid of Kyle Shanahan and then he can come coach the Jets. But I really do feel that'd be sick. But I really do feel like they get the most out of their offensive linemen in this scheme. I think they're really well coached. I think these guys know the scheme, and obviously with all these playmakers, it's a little bit easier on this offensive lineman. And I think they can get good production out of guys on day 2 and day 3. But I think for this team in particular, I think they need to get back to being dominant along the defensive line. I mean, they've been okay this year. I think they're tied for 10th right now in sacks, but that is mainly due to last week when they played Chicago. They had 7 sacks. So these last 3 years, they've been top 10 in sacks. I think they need to make a strength again along this defensive line. I love Mykel, who's just so raw right now, but learning from a guy like Nick Bosa, who's just an absolute tactician with his hands. I think that's exactly a guy Mykel needs to learn from. He's got all the burst and the length and the tools to be great along this defensive line. And they obviously have a bunch of good guys with Bosa and Hargrave that he'll get a lot of one-on-one matchups, and he'll be really good in this rotation. So I think this is a good spot for him in San Fran. I think they can really coach up these defensive linemen, and I think they'll get the most out of him.
Yeah, it's just a San Fran pick. I feel like last year, even too, I was saying I really wanted them to address that defensive line. I felt like it was kind of getting a little shallow. So I think it's good to see them address it again with someone who has a high end talent like Mykel Williams.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I was going to go. Well, after I had kind of gotten rid of the offensive line, I wasn't sure if I was going to go on the interior or the edge. But I think I was between Mykel and Walter Nolan, and I think I just like Mykel's upside a little bit more at edge. So we'll see.
Walter Nolan's a fun player.
I really like Walter Nolan too. I just think Mykel. I mean, you mentioned, I forget who you said it about as a ball of clay, but this guy is a true ball of clay.
I said about Scorton.
Yeah, for sure. All right, you're on the clock here at 18 with the LA Rams.
Yeah, I'm going Josh Connerly, the left tackle for Oregon. Joseph Noteboom and Alaric Jackson are both free agents at the end of this year. So I think left tackle is going to be a need. I think, like you said, with the Shanahan scheme, this McVay scheme also does get the best out of their offensive line. So maybe there's a chance that they kind of kick the can down the road and look for more of a day two type guy or a free agent. But I think Connerly really fits his scheme well. He's 6'4", 315 pounds, and he moves really well for his size. I love his range in the run game. I think it would fit this McVay scheme really well. He's only allowed one sack this year and six total pressures, which is fantastic. Uh, as a sophomore, he was one sack and 17 pressures with Bo Nix under center, who's notorious for not getting sacked. So I really am surprised that his numbers didn't take a little bit of a dip from last year. So it really shows his improvement going into his junior season. I think he was my offensive tackle 4, if not mistaken, over summer scouting. And I believe he'll end up finishing higher if I had to guess. I think he may end up being a top 2 tackle for me.
Wow. Nice. Yeah, Connerly's a good player, really good mover. 315, I feel like he's still lighter than that. He was
Yeah.
light over the summer and he looks light on tape too. Um, Also, I don't want to sound bitter here, but he got away with a lot of holds against Abdul Carter this past weekend. I'll send you the clips. So those 6 pressures, I don't know how accurate that is, but no, Conroy is a really good player. And like you said, I really love him as well in this scheme with McVay, where they get their, even though they've really gone to that gap power scheme over the last few years, but I still think he holds up in that scheme for them. All right, I'm on the clock here at 19 with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I got them taking edge Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M. The Bucs have been looking for a dominant edge for a few years, and they've really haven't found one. While they have been able to generate a lot of pressure this year, it's largely been from the interior with Vita Vea and Kalijah Cansey and Todd Bowles' scheme with they bring a ton of blitz from a ton of different areas, and they really like to confuse offensive linemen. But no edge on their team has more than 3 sacks this year. So I still think they need a guy that they can throw out there, go one-on-one with tackles, and win. Stewart is still really, really raw, but he has power, he's got length, and he's got movement skills for a guy playing edge at 290. I'd be curious to see. He's kind of similar. He's got more juice than a guy that you really like that Tampa Bay took a few years ago, a guy like Logan Hall. I'd be curious to see if they end up like reducing him inside at all. I think they do have a lot of bodies on the interior, and they do need him to play full-time edge. But I'd be curious to see what Todd Bowles wants to do with him as a player with that weight and that speed. But man, he's another one, ball of clay, and he can really do some damage when he gets going.
Yeah, I think he fits what Todd Bowles looks for in defensive lineman too. He's big. He can play that like 5 tech. He can be moved up and down the line. So I think it makes a lot of sense. A good fit.
Right. Round us out here. Pick 20 with the Washington Commanders.
This one's easy for me. I'm going Ashton Genty, the running back. He's finally off the board.
Ooh.
It's probably my second favorite pick so far. I think he was after this season, Heisman caliber season. I think he should win it personally.
Me
But
too.
I think it solidifies him as a first round pick for sure. And I think this 20 range really does make sense. I think it's a sweet spot. He had nearly 2,500 yards on 344 carries for 29 touchdowns, 7.3 yards per carry. When it comes to Genty, it's the contact balance is his A+ trait. I think the arm tackles and just weak diving with the shoulders is not going to knock him down. You have to really wrap up and drive through. The pace and the patience he runs at is also really unique. It's Le'Veon Bell-esque, how patient he is with working his way through the line of scrimmage. And he also does have an extra gear. I think he'll end up being a 4-4 type of guy. This last week, I was texting someone like, oh, I wonder how he's going to test or if he's even going to test. And we were talking about the next play. He broke one for 70 and just kind of like pulled away so easily from the defense. I was like, okay, like, he'll be fine. Him and Jaden Daniels for the long haul, dynamic backfield, and this offense in Washington's really going to be cooking.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with a player of this talent going at 20. I think I probably would have gone either offensive line or I know they've invested a lot in the corner over the last few years and they traded for Marshall and Lattimore, but I still think they need more help in that secondary.
I just don't like the value at any of those spots here.
Yeah, I hear you. I know we talked about it before the draft, but like this corner class is very good, but it's very deep too. So I feel like some of these guys are starting to get pushed down. There's a lot of guys that we haven't even talked about yet. I think we've only had two corners go off the board, and Hunter and Will Johnson so far. So hard to argue with a talent like Genty, and like you said, him and Jalen Daniels are really really fun. I do really like what they've gotten out of Brian Robinson this year. He's looked like a different player this year with Jalen Daniels back there. But yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what they do because I'm sure they want to shore up that offensive line because Jalen Daniels does take some mean hits for sure, and he's a little bit light. So I'd be curious to see where they go if they end up going offensive line to protect him a little bit. All right, let's roll through the last 10 and then we'll keep it going. At pick 11, the New Orleans Saints took edge from Penn State, Abdul Carter. 12 was the Dallas Cowboys taking wide receiver Luther Burden from Missouri. 13, the Miami Dolphins took offensive tackle Ariante Ursary from Minnesota. 14 was the Indianapolis Colts taking Penn State tight end Tyler Warren. 15 was the Atlanta Falcons taking James Pierce Jr., the edge from Tennessee. 16, the Arizona Cardinals took interior defensive lineman Derek Harmon from Oregon. 17 was the San Francisco 49ers taking edge Michael Williams from Georgia. 18 was the LA Rams taking Oregon tackle Josh Connerly. 19 was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking edge Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M. And then 20 was the Washington Commanders taking running back 1, Ashton Genty from Boise State. I put in a little Heisman bet today for Genty, plus 1,000. I really do think he deserves it, man.
I do too.
I know it's, stuff we've never really seen before with Travis Hunter, and he has had a really good year on both sides of the ball. But, man, you're telling me that Boise State has a first-round bye if they don't have Ashton Genty? Let's be real.
No, you're 100% right. He's the most important player.
I know Maddox Madsen is a really good quarterback, but he ain't getting them.
Poor Malachi Nelson transferring again.
Oh, damn shame. You hate to see the 5 stars on their third team in 3 years.
Yeah.
Fucking bitches. I didn't mean that, Malca.
Welcome.
All right, I'm on the clock. I'm on the clock here at pick 21. I got the LA Chargers. I got them taking Colson Loveland, tight end from Michigan. It's a Loveland Harbaugh reunion. I think this is exactly what this team needs to. The Chargers desperately need some pass catchers with rookie Ladd McConkey leading the way for them. Loveland can play multiple roles as a true outside threat. He can play in the slot, and he can play in line. I think he needs to work on his blocking skills a little bit for what they want to do. They really want to control the ground game and then take shots off of play action. But I think he fits a role for this team and a need for this team, and he will be a perfect complement to what Ladd McConkey is giving them. Just another big target for Herbert in the middle of the field to go make some plays. You see the effect that Brock Bowers has had on the Las Vegas Raiders offense this year, and I think Loveland is a kind of similar type of player to what Brock Bowers is.
Yeah, I like it. I think I mocked them there last time, so it's gonna be a common one. I can guarantee that for the for this entire draft process.
Yeah, for sure. All right, you're on the clock here. Pick 22 with the Denver Broncos.
This is a straight value pick. I'm going Malachi Starks.
Way too far.
Way too far. I mean, this is someone I think he's going to be a top 5 guy for me in this class. I know safety position is a little devalued at the moment, but I think he ends up going top 10 this year. I think the run on safety is not going in the top 10 is going to be over. But I'll take him here at 22 with Denver. It's hard to find a fit, I guess, in terms of how the board fell. But he's stepped onto the field day one at Georgia as a starter and the leader of that defense. He can play free safety, box, in the slot. I think he's about 48% at free safety right now, 21% in the box, and 26% in the slot as a slot corner, which is really interesting. But his range is incredible as a deep safety, and his man cover abilities, he's sticky in coverage as a slot corner. He has 6 career interceptions. This year, he was a little bit down in coverage. From last year, I think the passer rating against him went from about 100, went from 61 to about 100. But I think it's just because they asked him to play so much more slot after Bullard and Lassiter left. So I think he has the goods to play it in the league, but I think he'll be more of that free safety roaming type of guy. And Denver needs that since Justin Simmons left.
Yeah, he really reminds me of a player that I loved coming out a few years ago in Brian Branch, but he's got 3 inches and 15 pounds on Branch. He's just a really, really special player. The this is a top 5 guy for me, like you said right now. I don't know where he ends up falling, but you're going to get a damn good player because this guy can make a real impact at all 3 levels on the defense. So I love this pick for Denver, who's they don't have a lot of big names on this defense, but they are so well coached. They are so well schemed, and their defense is playing really well right now. Looking at a little playoff run for Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos in year 1. How about that?
Who would have thought?
Really, not me. All right, I'm on the clock here. Pick 23 with the Seattle Seahawks. I got them taking offensive tackle Cameron Williams from Texas. Seattle has had a lot of shifting along their offensive line this year, with Abe Lucas being hurt for most of the year. They've gotten him back in the past couple weeks, but it's been up and down. They're top 10 in sacks allowed with 40 this year. Laken Tomlinson and Stone Forsythe are set to hit free agency next year. Seattle has drafted a ton of offensive linemen in terms of depth over the past few years, with the guys like Christian Haynes that they drafted last year out of UConn, Olu Atimi 2 years ago from Michigan. So I think this is great.
That was 2 years ago?
Yeah.
My mind's just fucked.
Time flies, brother.
Yeah, right?
So I think it's a great time to take a high upside tackle like Williams when you have a lot of these young guys like in this offensive line room. He is just a massive hulking human being, 6'5", 335. He's got big time upside with long arms, raw power. He's had some really, really high and bright moments this year. He also has looked overwhelmed this year, but I think with his traits, comping him to he's not. I'm not comping him to Amarius Mims, but I'm talking about a guy with high level traits. These guys rise in the process, and I think he's going to be a big time riser. I'm curious to see if he could end up possibly playing guard too, because I don't love his kick slide depth and his foot speed. So maybe he gets pushed into the interior, and you keep Abe Lucas as your right tackle, where they battle it out at camp to play that right tackle spot. But I think this is a good time for them. One, they need to improve this offensive line, and 2, they got a lot of depth with young guys. So I think they can keep taking swings on some high upside guys.
Yeah, I like that pick, and more importantly, hopefully that would mean they cut Abe Lucas, and maybe the Jets can go get him on the cheap because he's been hurt. Love me some Abe Lucas.
All right, you're on the clock here at 24 with the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, this was a tough one just because I really wanted to go offensive tackle. I was actually targeting Cameron Williams, but you snagged him from me because this Ravens team, Stanley's gonna be a free agent. Makari and Josh Jones are all free agents. Those are 3 tackles, and I feel like we've been saying even since last year they need to address this tackle position. They just haven't. So I'm gonna go with a fun one. I'm going Walter Nolan, the defensive tackle, defensive lineman from Ole Miss. They need some depth on the defensive front. This defense hasn't been, I feel like, what we're used to out of the Baltimore defense, if I'm being honest. They're really shallow up front. I know they just paid Matabuke, but they could use some other players as well. This is someone, Nolan, at Texas A&M, he kind of moved all around. I feel like he played a lot more edge and over the tackle than as a 3-tech. And this year, they played him as a 3-tech, 73% of snaps, and his production really skyrocketed. He had 30 total pressures, 6.5 sacks, and 14 tackles for a loss. So I think Baltimore could use him in that role, but this is someone, he has the athleticism in the build where he can play up and down this defensive line. I view him as sort of like how they use Calais Campbell. I think they would really get a lot out of him with his just raw athleticism and talents. He played with a lot more strength and violence this year too, so I think this is someone who has a really, really high ceiling. Obviously, he was like the number 1 overall recruit coming out, so we'll see if he ends up going in the first round. I think he ends up just because of how he'll test, but we'll see if this is even maybe a little bit too low when all's said and done.
Yeah, Walter Nolan's had a great year, man. It's nice to see him like really break out because he was a fine player at Texas A&M, and everybody was talking about him, getting a big bag, going to Ole Miss, and it's nice to see that that really paid off for him, that move to Ole Miss this year. I'm a little curious about this pick. Baltimore, like you said, their defense has been a little bit different this year. They are dominant against the run this year. They just can't cover anybody on the outside. So I'm curious to see what they end up doing. Maybe it's a product of, you keep adding defensive linemen, you keep adding guys who can get to the quarterback, and that helps your back end. Because I do still like a lot of the pieces that they have in the secondary. So I'm curious to see what they do because they always seem to get the most out of their guys in the secondary, but this year it's been a little bit lackluster for sure. All right, I'm on the clock here at pick 25 with the Houston Texans. I got them taking interior defensive lineman Kenneth Grant from Michigan. Man, I love everything about this fit. This might have been my favorite pick of the draft. D'Amico Ryans wants a tough, physical, nasty defensive line. That's what you're getting when you take Kenneth Grant. I love adding him to complement what they have on the edge with Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter. Guys on the interior, Danico Autry is 34. Foley Fatukasi is a pending free agent next year. I like Grant as a big-time run stuffer who's got pass rush upside. Man, I think he's going to turn some heads at the combine. This guy is an absolute freak of an athlete. He's 340 pounds, and people are saying that he's either going to run in the very low fives or under five, which I find insane. But I'm really excited to see him test at the combine. I think he's going to be a big-time riser come draft time.
Yeah, I really like this fit too because he doesn't have to get thrown right into like the limelight right away. Where I think he can learn and develop, really like be drafted immediately for that run stuffing ability that you mentioned. I think that pass rush arsenal and just ability will grow because he, like you mentioned, he's a freak, and
Right.
I think he has all the tools to become a really disruptive three tech in this league.
Mm-hmm. All right, you're on the clock here. Pick 26 with the Green Bay Packers.
So for me, I'm going Siobhan Ravel. Is that how you pronounce his name? Is it
Yeah.
Siobhan? Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Mhm.
This is a tough one just because he tore his ACL obviously back in September, so really didn't have a junior season. But he's big and long, 6'2", 190, great length and athleticism. Out of Eastern Carolina and missing the final season, it is a tough evaluation, especially to be a first round pick. But his ball skills are nothing to joke about. He had 2 interceptions in the first month of the season before he got hurt, and last year he had 1 and 10 pass breakups. So the ball skills are there. And for Green Bay, Stokes is a free agent. He hasn't really been playing as well as he did as a rookie. I really liked him as a rookie personally, but he hasn't really developed as much as people thought. So I think pairing Jair Alexander with another young ball hawking cornerback would really help this defense on the back end.
Yeah, I really love Siobhan Ravel, and I think I'm probably going to end up being higher on him than consensus. I don't have my board up right now. I have him at 12 right
Wow.
now. I really like what he did last year, and at the beginning of the season, you saw why he was going to have a massive season. He'll be ready to go after that ACL injury. Tore his ACL in the first month of the season. But man, I love his ball skills. I love his length. And I love just the way his demeanor, the way he plays corner, feisty, physical, wants to dominate you. So I think he's really scheme versatile too. I think he is really good in press man, but I think he might even be better playing in off coverage too and letting everything come in front of him and really making plays. Siobhan Ravel is really, really good player for anybody who has not seen East Carolina before. All right, I'm on the clock here at pick 27 with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I got them taking wide receiver Emeka Ibuka from Ohio State. Man, Arthur Smith, for all his flaws as a head coach, has done a really, really good job for this team as the offensive coordinator. He's gotten the most out of this run game. He's gotten the most out of Russell Wilson, taking deep shots off of play action. I love Ibuka and his fit with this team and this scheme because he's tough, he's smart, and he fits what that Pittsburgh organization wants to do, and that is win. He's a total team guy. I really love his game. He blocks his ass off, which is perfect for this downhill rushing attack. And I really think he plays off of George Pickens and that deep stuff really well. I think he'll be a perfect complement to what they want to do. He'll be an over-the-middle type of guy. We really haven't seen Roman Wilson, who's a guy that we both really liked coming out last year. I think Ibuka could play on the outside too, and you let Roman Wilson slot into the slot. I really just like this fit. I think the three of them all complement each other really well. This guy's just going to be a pro's pro. He might not ever wow you. He probably won't ever be a dominant number one, but this guy's going to be a damn good number two when he gets into the NFL.
Yeah, I agree with most of what you said. I think he fits really well with what this Pittsburgh offense as a whole wants to do. He's gritty and tough, really smart. I think he'll be a sticks guy for whoever the quarterback is. I was going to say Russell Wilson, but obviously he's not really under contract. But the one thing that really does I don't really like about the pick is just I feel like it kind of makes Roman Wilson a little bit obsolete because I do view Emeka Ibuka as a slot guy. I mean, I do think he can play outside, but I think the majority of where you want him is the slot. So I'm just curious how those two would work off each other.
Yeah, I really do think so. Coming into this season, when we did summer scouting, I kind of said the same thing. I was like, I think he's primarily a slot only guy. But what I've seen this year, I feel like the plays that he has on the outside, like he's good getting off the line of scrimmage. Um, he doesn't really struggle with press man coverage because his footwork is so good, and he's really tactical and he's really physical with his hand fighting too. So I don't think it's going to be too much of an issue for him getting off the line of scrimmage. Um, so we'll see. I get what you're saying, but I really do think those two guys can play off of each other, especially in an offense like this, where it's deep shots or it's just that stuff over the middle of the field. They really don't run too many concepts outside of that. So I hear what you're saying, but I do still think they both those guys can play with each other.
Fair enough.
All right, you're on the clock here. Pick 28 with the Minnesota Vikings.
This is another one of my favorite fits, I think. Jalen Walker, I'm going. The edge slash off-ball linebacker from
This
Georgia.
might be too low.
Yeah, I think it's really, insane value based on what I think a lot of the draft experts are saying right now. For me personally, not really my type of player, but when it comes to the fit in this Brian Flores defense, I think this is as good of a fit as you can imagine for Jalen Walker. 6'2", 245. He kind of has a little bit shorter arms, so I don't know if he's going to be able to be a full-time edge. But in a multiple defense like this, where he can move between being an off-ball linebacker and then blitzing heavily, and even coming off the edge as a true edge rusher, I think that's where he's going to make. That's where he's going to be at his best. This season, he had 28 pressures, 6.5 sacks, and 11 tackles for a loss on only 180 pass rush snaps too. So he's been ultra efficient when he's been able to rush the passer. And I think it just comes to his just natural burst and athleticism. His closing speed on quarterbacks as a blitzer and just when he's got some space, it really is special. And I do understand why people view him in that Micah Parsons-esque role. And I just think pairing him with Dallas Turner really just elevates and just gives his defense two freaky athletic guys that can just be moved all over. I know a lot of people probably would have expected a cornerback in this spot, but again, I just didn't really like the value, especially with someone like Jalen Walker still on the board.
Yeah, I know you were a big Anthony Barr guy coming out. Is this exactly the type of player that you thought Anthony Barr would be?
Well, I think I think
Anthony Barr is a lot bigger.
Bigger and more physical. He's just smaller and more juice in a sense. So, I think I don't know. I don't really view him at all like Anthony Barr, but I understand what you're saying.
I'm just saying the role more.
Yeah.
You thought Anthony Barr would probably be full-time edge coming out.
Yeah, I think,
but then he ends up going to play more off-ball.
I agree with that, but at the same time, I think this Jalen Walker is going to be someone who's going to be a true chess piece, where I feel like Anthony Barr didn't really get that opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm fascinated to see how teams use him because I think his tape is better at edge, but I think he probably fits better in the league just with his size on his arm length as an off-ball. So I'm fascinated to see what team takes him and what type of plan that they have for him. But a really good player nonetheless. I'm on the clock here, pick 29 with the Buffalo Bills. I got them taking wide receiver Isaiah Bond from Texas. Thought about a defensive line here for Buffalo, but this is really the piece that they're missing on their offense. This speed element is really something that they're lacking, something that they really need. They traded for Amari Cooper at the trade deadline, but he really hasn't done much since he's gotten there. He's a free agent next year too. Curious to see what they do about him. I feel like they're not going to end up signing him, but we'll see. Josh Allen is hitting his prime right now, man. It's scary to say because how good he's been the last few years, but this is maybe the best I've seen of Josh Allen with this ragtag group of wide receivers.
Whoa! Put some respect on Khalil
Shakir's name. I'm about to put some respect on Shakir's name. Don't worry. So I think you really need to maximize this window with the way Josh Allen has been playing. Bond, Shakir, Keon Coleman. I think that's a really nice trio to move forward with. They all play a different style. They're all a little bit different role. I think at the beginning of the year, I thought they would take a step back. But like I said, the way that Allen's playing, I mean, they got to keep this window alive as long as possible. And Bond's speed and his playmaking ability in the open field, I feel like can really unlock this already really strong offense that Buffalo's got.
Yeah, I mean, I would have really liked Tyleik Williams here for this team. I think they need to get a little tougher up the middle on that defensive side of the ball. But like you said, the way that Bond complements Shakir and Keon Coleman amongst the other receivers they have, I think it does make for a really nice core of young playmakers while you're paying your quarterback.
Yeah, I wanted to go D line, but I was saving some room for my boy Dwayne Carter. Hopefully, get him more snaps.
Fair enough.
All right, you're on the clock here. Pick 30 with the Philadelphia Eagles.
I'm going Landon Jackson, the edge from Arkansas. Sweat and Graham are both free agents at the end of the year. We all know how Philly loves going with the trenches early. Jackson, he's big. I think he's like 6'6", maybe. I think he may be listed 6'7", but he's probably a little bit closer to 6'6", 280. Long arms. I think he's got a little bit more juice for someone his size, even though he's not as fluid of an athlete. He doesn't have those much bend, but he gets off the line pretty quickly, has some pop in his hands. And I just think with their edge rushers currently consisting of Bryce Huff, Nolan Smith, and Jalix Hunt, you need someone who's a little bit heavier handed and bigger. So I think he fits this room really nicely and fits what the Eagles look for in the edge rusher well too.
Yeah, he's going to be fascinating, man, because we talk about tools and he's got so many, man, right? He's tall, he's long, he's physical, he's powerful. But, man, his season, I just feel like has been so up and down. The tape is so up and down. I'm not sure where he ends up. I feel like this is probably a good landing spot for him at the back end of one. But I do think he may end up falling out to day two. Be very, very fascinated to see. But this is a very good landing spot in Philly, I think, for him.
I wouldn't be surprised, especially because edge rushers are really deep this year. I feel like it's really deep and it's really versatile in the sense of how like the types of players that they are. So it's really going to come down to flavor, I think. And so I wouldn't be surprised if they fell into the second or maybe even third round.
Yeah. All right, I'm on the clock here. Pick 31, the Kansas City Chiefs. I got them taking offensive tackle Josh Simmons from Ohio State. I know the Chiefs have invested a lot in this offensive line, but I feel like they're still searching for answers at tackle. Wanya Morris and Kingsley Suamataia have been really up and down this year. Obviously, you're not going to give up on Suamataia. He's a rookie this year, but it hasn't been the greatest rookie season. Trey Smith along the interior is a free agent this offseason. He's arguably the best offensive lineman to hit the market this offseason too. So I'm very curious to see if they can retain him and they can bring him back. But I really like Simmons in this scheme, especially where their offensive linemen are asked to do a lot, especially getting out and running. Simmons is a really good athlete. I think he fits with this group really well. And what you've seen from this Ohio State team in the last few weeks when he was out, that they struggled to run the football and they just weren't as dominant. I think it just shows you how good of a player and how impactful Josh Simmons has been this season. He's been a big-time riser for me this season. I think I had him at 7 in the summer. I think he may end up being a top 4 guy for me when it's all said and done. He's a really, really steady player, a guy I'd feel comfortable throwing out there at either right or left tackle in his rookie year.
Yeah, he's played a lot of football. He's been a really good bright spot for that Ohio State offensive line this year. The injury is going to be tough, obviously, but he's a good pass protector, great athleticism, good length. So as a true tackle sense, he's one of the few people I think that's like the few guys in this class that are a bona fide tackle. You know what I mean? There really aren't questions about it. He's got the mold and the build. So I like the pick for Kansas City.
All right, round us out here. Pick 32, the Detroit Lions.
I'm going with my boy Tyleik Williams, the defensive tackle from Ohio State. I know Detroit kind of needs a little bit more of an edge rusher in this sense. I think people were hoping for, but I just think Tyleik fits the mold of this defense so well. He's someone, I think he's the best 2-gapper in this class. I think his ability to just stack and shed at the line of scrimmage and really hold the point of attack is outstanding. I think he's one of the best run defenders in this class. I think he can replace oh my god, Onwuzurike, is that how you pronounce it? I can't read, so it's troubling.
Yeah.
I think he can replace him immediately next year. Then I think be the long-term replacement for Reeder on this defense. I considered Mike Green the edge rusher from Marshall or JT Tuimoloau out here too. But at the end of the day, I just think this is a high-floor guy and just really fits the toughness of this defense.
Yeah, I like Tyleik, man. He's another one, like safe pick. Maybe doesn't have upside to be a top 10 interior defensive lineman in the league, but this guy's just going to be steady, in the league. He's a really good run defender. So I like this pick for Detroit, um, who needs, they don't need it, but who wants these nasty guys along that defensive line. I like that one.
Yeah.
All right, let's go 1 through 32, and then we'll touch on a couple guys outside who just missed. At pick number 1, the Las Vegas Raiders took quarterback Shedeur Sanders from Colorado. Pick 2 was the New York Giants taking quarterback Cam Ward from Miami. 3 was the New England Patriots taking wide receiver 1 Tedero McMillan from Arizona. 4 was the Carolina Panthers taking Travis Hunter, the wide receiver corner from Colorado. 5 was the Jacksonville Jaguars taking interior defensive lineman Mason Graham from Michigan. 6 was the Tennessee Titans taking Texas A&M edge Nick Scorton. 7 was the New York Jets taking quarterback Drew Aller from Penn State. 8 was the Cleveland Browns taking Kelvin Banks, the offensive tackle from Texas. 9 was the Chicago Bears taking LSU tackle Will Campbell. 10 was the Cincinnati Bengals taking Michigan corner Will Johnson. 11 was the New Orleans Saints taking edge Abdul Carter from Penn State. 12 was the Dallas Cowboys taking Missouri wide receiver Luther Burden. 13, the Miami Dolphins took Ariante Ursary, the offensive tackle from Minnesota. 14 was the Indianapolis Colts taking tight end 1 Tyler Warren from Penn State. 15 was the Atlanta Falcons taking James Pierce Jr., the edge from Tennessee. 16, the Arizona Cardinals took Derek Harmon, the interior defensive lineman from Oregon. 17 was the San Francisco 49ers taking edge Michael Williams from Georgia. 18 was the LA Rams taking Oregon tackle Josh Connerly. 19 was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking Shamar Stewart, the edge from Texas A&M. 20 was the Washington Commanders taking RB1 Ashton Jeanty from Boise State. 21 was the LA Chargers taking tight end Colson Loveland from Michigan. 22, the Denver Broncos took first safety off the board Malachi Starks from Georgia. 23, the Seattle Seahawks took Cameron Williams, the offensive tackle from Texas. 24 was the Baltimore Ravens taking interior defensive lineman Walter Nolan from Ole Miss. 25 was the Houston Texans taking interior defensive lineman Kenneth Grant from Michigan. 26, the Green Bay Packers took East Carolina corner Siobhan Revelle. 27, the Pittsburgh Steelers took Emeka Ibuka, the wide receiver from Ohio State. 28 was the Minnesota Vikings taking Jalen Walker, the edge linebacker from Georgia. 29 was the Buffalo Bills taking Texas wide receiver Isaiah Bond. 30 was the Philadelphia Eagles taking Landon Jackson, the edge from Arkansas. 31, the Kansas City Chiefs took Ohio State tackle Josh Simmons. And then 32, the Detroit Lions took interior defensive lineman from Ohio State, Tyleik Williams.
Good job, Sauce.
Thanks, bro. All right, let's
hardest
talk
part
about
of the time.
Huh?
Hardest part every time.
Yeah, it is. Catching my breath. All right, let's talk about a few guys. I'm going to read off a bunch of names. You shout out whoever you want. Talk about them. I got a bunch of guys. So offensively, especially the offensive line, a couple of guys that didn't make the first round, but have a chance to get into the first round. Marcus Mabo, who's done a really good job for Purdue this year. Jonas Savanaia, a guy that I really liked over summer from Arizona. Donovan Jackson, the guard, who's played a little bit of tackle this year with the injury to Josh Simmons for Ohio State. Tyler Booker, the guard from Alabama. And then Wyatt Milam, a guy that I really think should have been in the first round. He's had a damn good year. Couldn't find a spot for him with a couple of these other tackles. I think I like the fit better. And then defensively, a couple edges who have a shot to make the first round. Mike Green, a guy you mentioned from Marshall, having a really good season. Prince Umanuel, a guy that I really love. Jack Sawyer from Ohio State. Deion Walker, the massive interior defensive lineman from Kentucky. Maxwell Harrison, the corner from Kentucky, having a really good year. Benjamin Morrison, the corner from Notre Dame. Trey Amos, the corner from Ole Miss. And then Jahade Barron, the corner from Texas. I think those corners are really interesting. Those guys are really good players, but there's so many good corners in this class. I feel like that's kind of why they all fell out. But anybody that you really wanted to shout out this group?
Yeah, I think Donovan Jackson, I think, or even Booker from Alabama. I think one of those guards are going to end up sneaking into the first round. I think guards always sneak in at the back end. That's one thing we got to do better. We never mock guards in the first. We always mock the tackles who can make it like converted. But those guys were just true guards. I think one of them will end up going in the first, and I think Maxwell Harrison as well. You mentioned really good year, physical cornerback. I can see him sneaking into the back end of 1-2.
It is really funny. We never mock the guards to the first round, but those elite guards always go at the back end of round one.
Always the guys who are just really, really good, but they only played guard.
Yeah, right. Like Tyler Booker is such a good player. Like he is honestly, I would say he's a lock for the first round.
I thought about doing him to the Ravens.
Yeah, he's such a good player. I want to shout out Jahade Barron. He's one of the most fun players I've watched on tape this year. He's got so many takeaways, but his physical style of play as a converted safety, I think he's going to be a really interesting one. I'm not sure how he's going to end up testing out, but I think with his versatility and his play experience, playing safety, playing in the slot, and now playing as an outside corner, I think that's going to be really valuable to a lot of teams who can play him in so many multiple roles. I think he's a good one that will end up being a first-round pick.
Yeah, I'm really interested in watching his tape just because of the versatility that you mentioned and the ball skills. I haven't really gotten a chance to dive into him yet.
Right. And then the last one, the guy I shouted out before, Wyatt Milam. Just rock steady, long, physical, tough. He's another one. This is not a guy who's going to kick inside. That guy's a tackle.
I've heard a lot of people say that they think he's going to be a guard.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't see that.
I haven't watched him yet either, but yeah, that's one thing I heard. I heard I actually think Brugler lists him as a guard.
Ooh.
If I'm not mistaken.
Dang. What are we doing? Check the tape, man. All right, that's going to wrap it up for us here on Between Two Tackles. Thank you for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed our mock draft. Stay locked in with us. We got a lot of good stuff coming. Obviously, we got to cover the college football playoff coming up in a few weeks. We're going to have more mocks coming out. We got big boards coming out. We got player rankings coming out. We're going to talk Senior Bowl. We're going to talk Shrine Bowl, all that good stuff leading up to the draft. As always, please rate and subscribe to the pod and follow our Twitter at 2tackles with the number 2. You can also follow our YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram at Between Two Tackles with the number 2. We're going to have a lot of good stuff coming out this draft season. Stay locked in with us as we head towards this national championship. Ray, appreciate you, my friend.